Samsung PS43D450. The problem with it is that when I plug it in and switch on, the picture will appear briefly, up to about a minute, 2 minutes, and then the picture will go and audio will remain. I'm going to plug this in now and see what happens. Relay clicked, picture appeared, and now we have picture. Just waiting for it to shut down now. Now picture is gone. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this down its face and do a few tests on it. I've had a visual inspection of the power supply looking for bulging capacitors. As we all know, give problems on Samsung power supplies. Could find none. What I'm going to do is I'm going to measure a few voltages on this power supply, the output voltages, especially the VS voltage and the VA voltage. I have my meter connected up to the VS connector to the Y sus board, and I'm going to be measuring the voltage on that and see what happens. Went up to 2.6. That's normal voltage. Also, we can see on our control board that this light here is flashing, and when it goes into the fault mode, when it does go faulty, you'll probably see that that stops flashing, or it flashes at a lower rate. And we can see now our voltage is dropping down on the meter, and our light has stopped flashing, but it's sorry, I should say it's flashing at a lower rate. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and figure out, is it my power signal board. My signal board over here is behind the meter. Is this board here giving me problems? I'm going to disconnect that from the system. I'll just unplug it for a minute. I'm going to disconnect that from the system by removing this connector here. That will control the power supply. Now, on this connector here, we have a pin called PS on. It's the pin 5, and we got VS on. We got two pins on, VS on and PS on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to short the PS on first to ground, and the way I do that is I just put a wire link in. I use the screw here. Just put a wire underneath it and tighten it down. And then I would connect this into pin 5 of this connector, which is PS on. That operates this relay that brings the power supply on. But we also have another pin on here. Pin 6 is VS on, so I'm going to have to monitor that as well. Let's get our meter, zoom back out, and on this board here, on this control logic board, if I can get my on here, on this control logic board we have these connectors, and what I do is before I plug in the mains, I will put a screwdriver, you can use a wire link to short out these pins, hold it on there, plug in, and that should allow this control logic board to drive this power supply and the Y success, and you should have some kind of a screen on it. Come back out a bit, and I'm going to get my meter up. Connect it to ground. And I'm still monitoring the VS voltage. And as you can see, light is flashing on the control logic board, and I have my 205 volts without any control from the signal board. And there would be a kind of a grey raster on the front of the on the screen at the moment, but I'm not going to lift it. You're going to have to take my word for that. And let's see what happens. And the supply goes down, and we can see then our light stops flashing. Well, it flashes at a lower rate. Okay, let's bring my voltage scales down to a lower scale, and that is on my VS on voltage. What I have to do is let this sit for a while and do the test again, because it will not work straight away. It's sitting a few minutes now, and I'm going to plug it in now. Same test as before. PS on shorted to ground. This lead disconnected from the power supply, and I'm going to plug in, and but this time I'm monitoring the VS on voltage. And we're at 3.27 volts. Let's see if we've got any VS voltage. We have VS voltage as well. I'm just going to get back here before it shuts down. 3.27. And it shut down. Voltage dropping. Now what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to test the VS on circuit as well, so I'm going to have to short out the VS on as well, just to test my power supply, because it could be this control logic board that's shutting this down, or it could be a fault on the Y success that's shutting it down. Well, let's plug it out now and let it cool down again. Okay, I have all the cables disconnected from this power supply. And what I've done is I've ran a resistor from the 5-volt supply to the VS on pin, as you can see here. Put this to centralize on it. Pin 5 is your PS on. That's short of the ground. It needs a 0 volts for the power supply to come up. Pin 6, however, needs a high voltage. So I have a 5-volt supply here on pin 1, and I'm feeding it through a 5k, around 5k resistor, a 6k resistor, roughly around there, and it's dropping that voltage across that, which brings it to about 3 volts. And I've been testing this off camera, and unfortunately the power supply doesn't shut down. I plugged it in, and my VS voltage stays constant at 205 volts and doesn't shut down. However, there is no load on this power supply at the moment, because the Y-SUS is not operating, because I've disconnected it. So I'm going to have to come up with a way now of bringing on the load and still stop that control logic board from shutting it down, and see what happens. Mind you, disconnecting that control logic board could blow the Y-SUS and cause more damage. So maybe before I do that, I'm going to have a look at the Y-SUS board, see can I see anything wrong on the Y-SUS board. I'm going to remove this Y-SUS board now. The mains is disconnected. I've been looking at the solder condition on the bottom of this Y-SUS board, and I've noticed a couple of fairly poor solder joints on the likes of transistors and FETs. Right here in this one seems to be the worst one, if I can get zoomed in on first. That's as far as I'm going to be able to go in. This transistor here seems to be the worst. There is two fairly poorly soldered joints on these two legs here, but there is other fairly poorly soldered joints over here on other transistors, FETs. So I'm going to resolder the whole bottom of that board and do a retest on it and see if that cured the problem. I'm going to start by soldering over here. They're very bad, them two. And some up over here. Looks like a diode. They're poorly soldered. And this one over here is poorly soldered as well. Anywhere else I look and see something in general. I have the unit plugged in now, and it's been working now for the last half hour or so, so it's looking a bit better. But I have to be careful, because the mere fact I disturbed that white sus might have temporarily cured a poor solder joint that I just can't see. So I'm going to have to test it a little bit longer. But while that's on test, what I'm going to do is just going to go over what basically what I've done. You have your power supply, and you have your VS voltage and your VA voltage coming out, and that goes to the white sus PCB. These were dropping from your 205 volts down to 0 volts after about a minute, and likewise the VA voltage was dropping as well, and that should be around 58 volts according to the panel, but I'll just double check that shortly. And to get these voltages from this power supply on your connector CN802, PS on must be at 0 volts, and this is controlled through this control logic PCB, and you also need 0 volts from your signal board. Whether they switch up different voltages or not, I don't know. I haven't gone that far into the power supply. But normally if I disconnect this signal board, it works, the screen will work without this signal board. So maybe it just switches on voltages for itself that it needs, the lower voltages. I don't know yet, but it definitely needs this PS on. But it also has another control that goes from the control board, and it said VS. I'll just get that 1 second. It says VS on, and when it's working you have 3.5 volts around that, and I noticed when the unit was shutting down that was going down to 0 volts, even though this was good at 0 volts. It didn't rise. What I did then was, to test it, I put a meter on here, and I just checked this voltage on this VS on, and the minute it went faulty, it just dropped to 0. So I was thinking on the lines of, what if this Y sus is faulty and it's given some kind of feedback to this logic control board, which was then telling the power supply to shut down, you know, as a protection. That's why I was a bit weary of disabling that line, just in case it blew something. It also has to drive to the Y sus, to the it also has to drive from the control logic PCB to the Y sus. Your VS voltage comes out, and your VA voltage 205 and 58 volts. Okay, let's just look at what I did on the that, just so you're aware of what I was doing. This is a diagram of the connector CN802 that I shorted to ground. This was a 68K, just for, in case anyone's worrying that I would burn out any components on the control logic. Like, there has to be some kind of a transistor switching that low, and if you put too much current through it, it probably blow that transistor. Now that transistor could be inside a chip, which would give you more trouble. So it's a very high value resistor. What I did was, to test it, I put the 68K across and grounded pin 1, because PS on pin 5. This is 1 over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, PS on. I grounded that, so that kept that at 0 volts, and then I put the 68K resistor from this 5 volt supply, pin 1 is 5 volts, goes through that. And what I did then was I disconnected the VS voltage here. I disconnected that to the Y sus because I didn't want that working. All I wanted to do was test the power supply to see was it running. So in that mode with no load on it, no Y sus load on it, that power supply lasted, it was sitting there an hour and it never shut down. I know it wasn't under load and it wasn't getting the same stress and it wasn't getting hot, but at least it checks a lot of it. What I then did was I took off this Y sus board because I kind of suspected kind of feedback problem. And when I took it off, I looked at the bottom of it. I found some fairly badly dry jointed diodes and FETs on it. There was one in particular that was very bad. There was another few that was, it looked like a small bit of a ring around it. Was very hard to see, but they were all attended to, and I soldered a few other connectors as well and components. And it's up and working now, and it's still working. And let me just see if I got my voltage level so you can have a look. $205 volts is up on the VS, and you can see our control logic LED flashing away there rapidly. When it's in default mode, as you've seen, it flashed a lot slower than that, but once every 10 seconds or so. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to check my VA voltage, see what that is. Down here behind this capacitor there's a test point with VA on it, and it's telling me it's 57 volts, and there's a pot here with VA on it as well. I'm just going to adjust this up to the 58. That's a 58. You only do this adjustment when the unit is hot, and you don't want a moving picture either, so a stationary white pitch should be the best for it. And then I'm going over here to my VS. I don't know if you're able to get this, but up here at the top end of the board you see another test point with VS on it, and that says it should be 207 volts, and I'm just going to give it a slight bit of a notch up, and that's 207. And likewise you've got a little potentiometer there marked beside it with VS row on it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to upright this and show you the picture. I'll plug this in now and let you have a look at the picture. Relay clicked. Samsung logo. A little bit of sparkly at the turn on, but that's not what the complaint is. I probably would have to replace that Y sus on the unit, or possibly you might need a software upgrade, I don't know, but that's not what the customer complained about, so I'm not going to spend my time chasing that. There was a lot of problems with the dry joints on it was shutting down. I can see it's a little bit sparkly right over here on the right hand side. I can see a certain amount of dropout. It might need a bit of adjustment on the Y sus. I'm going to leave this testing now for the next 4 or 5 hours, and I will let you know how it gets on. Unit's been testing now for roughly approximately 4 or 5 hours, and it hasn't shut down on me. But however, there was still the sparklies to worry about, and it was difficult to watch some scenes on the TV, and I had to address the sparkly problem. And what I found was down here we have our Y or VSC voltage down here, right behind this capacitor. There's a test point and there's an adjustment there, and you look at your screen and it says minus 185 volts, and that was way off. It was at about 140, 150 volts. Obviously someone had a problem with it, and they did adjust it before I got a hold of it, because there was someone in here before me, and the back was off before. I seen screws missing out of it. There was only about 5 screws retaining this whole back in, and there's normally about 20 or so screws in it, but that cured my sparkly problem. I hope that's of some help out there. It will be some use to someone in a future repair. Thanks for watching.